Hi, Kathy. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Hi, Vern. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really excited to hear about some of your favorite books, the books that have been most impactful to you, most meaningful to you throughout your life.
Yes.
And I'm just going to start by asking you to tell me a little bit about yourself. If you want to let me know where you grew up and maybe who are the members of your family.
Sure. So I uh, grew up in Whittier the majority of my life, and grew up in my grandmother and grandfather's home with my mom and brother and sister, and that was an Armenian home, and being Armenian was very important. To our growing up and just our culture and beliefs and traditions. And my grandmother was a ferocious reader. She had so many books and she loved to read, and she grew up during the Depression, and I think it helped her get through, and she loved stories about anything and everything. She just loved to read, and that helped grow that love in our family. I actually I'm a educator. I was a teacher for 13 years, and then an instructional coach for 4 years. And for the past 5 years, I've been an elementary school principal at the school that I grew up in. And my brother and sister also attended. So I guess all roads lead to Whittier for me. Whittier has a very special place, and it was the place that I wanted to leave my whole life. And God had different plans, and now I'm so grateful to be in the community and get to serve the community that helped nurture me.
Can you recall your earliest memories of reading and of books?
Yes. So, my earliest memories of reading and books is actually my mother reading to us. Um, that was part of our nightly routine. We always had a bedtime, and she would take us in and read. I'd get to choose a book. My brother would choose a book. My sister would choose a book. And she would read to us, and then sometimes grandpa would come in and reenact the part of Wizard of Oz where the witch gets the water thrown on her and she's melting. And my grandpa was like this 6'2" Marine, and just like his stature just had kind of commanded presence, and to see him do that, he would just, I'm melting. That was, I would say, earliest memories. And then we'd go on visitation with my father, and he would always read a book called Harold and the Purple Crayon. And that was very special because there wasn't a lot of positivity on that side, but that book reading was very, very special, and still to this day. So I've always read that book to my students, and I would say Harold and the Purple Crayon is probably my favorite, I could say, childhood book.
And do you remember at the time when you were first reading it, what it was about that book that you loved so much?
Yes. It was, the book starts out with Harold. Um, well, there were a couple things, but his purple crayon just drew all the different places that he went to. So it was kind of this like adventure that would slowly unfold from just a line on a page. And sometimes it would be because Harold was walking too quickly and his hand was moving, that all of a sudden it made waves. And then he was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And so he had to draw a boat and get into the boat. And then the boat took him to an island. And then the island, he found himself hungry there. So all of a sudden he found a tree, and it was like everything was drawn. But the story was he can always find home if he remembers where the moon is through his window. And that was, there was something special about that. That is home is safety, and you can go on all these different adventures, but finding home, it's always there.
Beautiful. Absolutely. And when you were that age, was there something happening in your life that made that idea really special to you?
Yes. There was just a lot of uncertainty happening. My parents were going through a very rough divorce, I would say. It took 7 years for their divorce, and in and out of courts, and child services involved and everything. It was really, really rough. And there was something about also being in a book that it was an escape. And fantasy has been, I'm sorry, I'm so emotional.
It's okay.
Fantasy has, like, it's such a playful escape, if you will. And it was interesting that during such difficult times, a story could take you to a happier place. And then we would play, kids do a lot of dramatic play, and we would do a lot of that and just have so much fun pretending to do and be different places, be various characters. And I really appreciated the possibilities were endless theme, I guess I could say, of Harold and the Purple Crayon.
Do you recall, was there a book when you were an adolescent that had an impact on you?
Yes, yes. I would say the one that had the biggest impact on me was I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. And what really, what I have to tell you is I loved being read to growing up, but I had comprehension issues when I was reading myself. And so what I found was I love hearing people's stories. And Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings was kind of a story about her. And that made me really interested in in the story. And I hate to say it, but there was so much tragedy in there and sadness that it was the first time I heard that level of pain being like put into words, and that I could relate to some of that pain. And it gave me this feeling of you're not alone. And sometimes you feel that way when you don't talk about certain things, or you think it's not supposed to be talked about.
So for you, that book sort of broke the silence or like gave permission to talk about things or read about things that you'd never.
Yes, like it was the first book, like the abuse. There was abuse in our home. And it talked about molestation in there. It talked about her feeling voiceless. She was silent for a while. And she had this incredible relationship with her brother. And I have a very close relationship with my brother and my sister. But my brother kind of was like a guide and very important to me in life. Very important. It still is. So I just from then on I started to find the genre like that I liked. Usually from like a first person telling their story.
And I wanted to ask you, just in general, why do you think that books and reading matter?
Reading is so important. I can't even put it into words actually, but there's no mistake that in a nation's like affluence, if you will, is measured a lot in their literacy rate. And it's so important that our children do not leave school without knowing how to read. If there is nothing else we do, they have to know how to read, because reading was something that was withheld from so many as a tool to separate and as a tool to do horrible things. And it is our responsibility, especially I feel as educators, to make sure our children know how to read. And if they don't know how to read, we have to find what is going to connect them. Do we have a big enough library of books? Have they been able to explore them, or are we telling them this is the book you have to read? Let them explore. I've never seen a child go into a bookstore and be upset. They're excited when they go into especially the children's section, even if they don't know how to read a book or technically read a book, read a word. They do know how to read because they read pictures, they read faces, they approximate until they understand how to read those words. And so reading is vital to our well-being, not only as people, as a culture, as a nation, and to the whole world, for us to continue not only notating history, but also learning about one another, connecting with one another, and sharing our gifts with one another, and continuing to grow and outgrow ourselves in all that we do. There's always something to learn, and that's what books offer us.
Thank you so much for everything that you shared. I had a wonderful time with you. Thank you.
Oh, likewise, girl. I love you.